Does Austin Hill have any right to be upset over SVG moving him out of the way at the end?
I mean, I guess I don't. I watched it just like every other fan did, and saw Austin pushing SVG into turn one. No, you can't. You probably can't be mad. No, I would say not. I mean, while Shane's was maybe a little more egregious because he just drove in there. I mean, he buckled his whole front of this car. He hit him so hard, to knock him out of the way. It's kind of a, hey, you provoked it, and so you have to deal with the repercussions of that. So I don't think so. I thought it was just kind of a, racing thing where they're, I think Austin says, well, I think he checked up early. I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that SVG is going to undershoot a corner, going into turn one on a final restart. He's pretty dialed on his markers, but Austin saw an opportunity to win a race there, one that he hung around the top 5 to 6 most of the day. It wasn't like he just came out of nowhere, but he saw an opportunity. He tried to take it, and didn't work out, but still got a good finish.
And you always get one-upped in those situations, right? If you just bump a guy out of the way, he's going to come back and not just bump you. He's probably going to move you.
Yeah, it's going to go a little – the stakes are going to get raised a little bit the next time.
It's never an eye for an eye.
Nope.
That brings us to track limits, though, because SVG did not finish second. He was disqualified, penalized 30 seconds. Well, not disqualified, penalized 30 seconds. He might as well have been disqualified.
Yeah.
More or less the same thing. Penalized 30 seconds and finished 28th.
Yeah, I had a conversation with SVG during the driver intros before the Cup race, and just asking him, about that last lap. Like, is that normal? He's like, because he was bringing up, these guys, NASCAR, you guys just knock each other out of the way, and he's like, it's just different. He's like, I kind of like it, but compared to what I'm used to. But he's like, also, I said, so what would happen over in supercars in those situations? He says, well, normally I wouldn't have to worry about the 21 because they would penalize him. So even though he got
penalize him for
shoving him into turn one.
Okay.
Yeah. So he said that supercars would penalize Austin Hill for, let's just make it up, unnecessary contact, right? And so he said he would then just run second knowing that the 21 was going to get a penalty. He said, but he's like, he did this, so I'm going to just go ahead and get him right back. So he says it's just a little different where you never really have to retaliate in supercars because the officials handle it. They officiate it like most series does.
Okay, so that brings us to NASCAR. And they're officiating.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about track limits or are you talking about other things?
Well, a little bit of both. When you just brought up he would know that the 21 would be penalized, so he could race knowing that the 21 would be penalized. It takes me back to a few years ago when, where's the photo? The Briscoe photo, right behind you, right? Y'all were racing and you ran a half lap before something happened to the 14, then you end up getting, turned into the grass.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I like the self-policing thing as long as it's within limits for sure. I mean, but we've also seen some really bad, egregious stuff that's happened at Martinsville, complete shows at the end of Martinsville races for trucks and Xfinity, people trying to get in the Final Four. I mean, just all out, just junking each other. I think that's probably, those situations where it is egregious. Like, I wouldn't consider the 21 bump on SVG egregious.
Right.
I think there's been some that I've seen where, man, that there should be a penalty for that. He should have to go to the back, whoever that person was, for junking the other person. But slight contact, I would say, no, you just kind of let that stuff go. Let NASCAR be NASCAR in that instance.
The track limits, though.
Yeah. What about it? I mean, we had them. Everyone knew them. I see both sides of it for sure. Listen, NASCAR can't have us, running straight through the S's, and that's what we would do if we didn't have track limits. The difference is that other road courses, we have, bigger curbs and things like that keep us off of it. But it still doesn't change the fact that, on restarts, a lot of these penalties that we saw through the weekend came on restarts in the other series. It's because you can't see. I think that that's the only place where we could really loosen up a little bit, is that when the field's running 2x2 through the S's, no one is gaining an advantage. They're just trying to gain line of sight. So I think that you could just use a rule, and it's called the common sense rule. And that is that as long as someone does not gain an advantage by, cutting the S's or to get position maybe on someone on a restart, let the guys give them a foot, give them a little buffer zone. SVG, another thing he says that we would have a strike rule in supercars with the track limits. He said we would get 2 strikes and then you get a penalty the next time.
F1 gets 3.
Yeah, so it's I get it for sure. I just think that it's a more of a restart. If you cut the S's or you break the track limits when you're in wide open racetrack, that should be a penalty. It should, because there's too much to be gained if you do shortcut it. I mean, you can gain 3-4 tenths through there if you're shortcutting it 2 foot here and there. So I think that it's what we're doing is the right thing, and I know that's not popular right now on social media, but I also think that you've got to have some sort of parameters in which we need to race on. Now, I wouldn't change really anything from what we had this weekend. I know Michael McDowell is really heavy on, let's just put the curbs back up. And, the curbs will self-police it. I don't love that because you will tear up some and you'll have more people, destroy stuff under their car and destroy their day. I think you just got to NASCAR needs to use the common sense rule for 1 lap on restarts and let them get single filed out, then start enforcing it.
So as a driver, are you fully aware of track limits and where they are and where they're not?
Yeah. I mean, they made it pretty simple. They were going to do the entire track. Oh my gosh. That would have been, I mean, there was so many penalties this weekend. It would have been off the charts amount of penalties, but we would have drove differently. I mean, but I just think that our cars, just the way everything's set up, it's, we can so easily force each other off the track. It'd be really hard to enforce track limits all the way around the racetrack.
So do you think the SVG knows, like when he goes through whatever section that is, like, oh, I may have just cut the course there a little bit?
Yes. Because you can feel the rumble strips on the tires. And when you feel it, when you go through a corner, and especially the S's, and there's no rumble strip contact, you're like, oh, like, absolutely,
Yeah, so I think this is more of like disappointing for the fans, right? Because the fans don't see that unless it's pointed out on the broadcast immediately, like, hey, right there, he just potentially cut the course. We could have a penalty coming, right? They don't find out until after the race. It's like the guy who finished second is now finishing 28th.
I saw it right away, but I'm a driver, so I looked at it and I was like, he's gonna get one. And then like 5 minutes later, they announce it, and it's like, yeah, they got him. So again, he was getting no advantage there. Now he was single file, but I just think that this is the use the common sense. Let these guys race a lap, give them a foot or two, to single file out, and then enforce it after that. I think that'd be the best call. When you kind of digest this whole Chastain Larson thing, you definitely have to go back earlier